Welcome to this week's World Stories. Jakarta, of poverty and riches. Peru, felling the rainforest. But first, we turn to Russia. The country stands accused of trying to influence the 2016 US election. Lyudmila Savchuk worked as a so-called troll for an organization in St. Petersburg. This is her story.
We're not allowed to disclose an exact address, not even the district. This young journalist could face repercussions. 2 years ago, she was working among Russia's so-called internet trolls. She had a job at the Russian Agency for Internet Research. That's the official name of the St. Petersburg troll factory, whose bosses have now been indicted by the United States.
Employees at the troll factory get a list of topics every day that they have to work through. Bad news about the United States was always one of the more important topics.
2 years ago, we tried to make contact with those working inside these walls, to no avail. The revelations by Lyudmila lifted the lid on the troll factory on Savushkina Street, here in Russia's second city. This video from inside the building was sent to us by another whistleblower. According to Lyudmila, they're better paid than the average Russian. More than 1,000 people work here, according to her. But it's not even the only troll factory in Russia.
Today, no one can exactly say how far these trolls have really influenced the U.S. elections and individual voters. But it's absolutely clear that there was some meddling going on.
Lyudmila says the U.S. charges should serve as a wake-up call for many.
There are simply so many people who are working professionally for the Russian propaganda machine. I hope that others will soon be investigated.
Until that time, St. Petersburg is unlikely to be the sole source of Russia's fake news.
Jakarta is one of the world's megacities. The Indonesian capital is home to some 30 million, a population that is still growing fast. More often than not, these new arrivals find shelter in the slums springing up between the skyscrapers.
Almost everything Jakarta needs passes through this port, especially food for the rapidly expanding population. The average Indonesian consumes 150 kilos of rice annually. That's more than the country's rice farmers can produce. So more expensive rice must be imported. But many Indonesians can't afford it. The Yayasan Emmanuel Foundation provides aid to Jakarta's poorest people. Its founder collects leftover food from hotels. After graduating, Emmanuel Lomenier decided to pursue social work to help the needy.
I call myself a professional beggar. I spend my time begging for leftover food, begging for a bit of money. And it's depressing sometimes to be a professional beggar.
Nearly 30 million people live in Greater Jakarta. Indonesians looking for work move here from all regions of the island nation. Many end up living in the city's slums. Each day, Emmanuel brings the food he's collected to a different slum. Today, he's in Cilandak, in the south of the city.
There's about 500 families here, and they are scavengers, so they collect and they recycle the trash for Jakarta. Without them, there's no recycling. It's 500 families, but on average we have about 100 families coming each time.
People here earn little more than €1 per day collecting the trash. They're living well below the poverty line. And dozens of such slums exist in the capital. The aid worker worries about what will happen in the long term if the country fails to increase food production.
In places and communities and locations where there is an obvious increase in density of people and at the same time a decrease or the same level amount of food being produced, you'll create situations that are like a time bomb. So when people are desperate, when they see their children cannot eat, They will either have to move to look for the food or they will have to fight for their food.
And demand will only continue to grow. Indonesia has 260 million inhabitants. That number is expected to increase by 40 million over the next 10 years.
Turkey's military offensive against Kurdish militias operating in northern Syria is in full swing. Ankara has warned of a heavy price for anyone who speaks out against Operation Olive Branch. Most Turks back the offensive, but critics are accused of spreading terrorist propaganda.
They are knitting for the soldiers in the battle. Several times a week, these women meet in Istanbul's Üsküdar district. They make woolen hats to be sent to the Turkish-Syrian border, a gift for the troops at war.
We want our soldiers in Afrin to know that we support them as their mothers and sisters. They have everything they need, but this is our way to show that we are with them.
The mayor of Üsküdar set up the project. He's a member of the ruling AK party and believes every Turkish citizen should stand unconditionally behind the military operation in Syria.
We don't have any problem with those who say no to war. But if our country is being drawn into one, we need to fight. Those who say no to war have a hidden agenda. They are actually supporting the terrorists. And this is something we cannot tolerate.
Public support is strong, with polls suggesting more than 80% of Turks back the operation. Criticism is not welcome. President Erdogan is blunt. He calls those who oppose the war terrorist lovers. Samet Mengüç knows what that feels like. He represents Turkey's biggest medical association. Shortly after the military offensive began, the doctors had published a declaration saying no to war, peace now. A few days later, 11 of his colleagues were detained on charges of spreading terrorist propaganda. They have since been released, but the authorities' reaction shocked Mengüç.
Why were those doctors detained? First and foremost, because of the political climate in this country. We are going through a time with no tolerance for dissenting voices or contrary opinions. We stand by our position that saying no to war is not a crime. It shouldn't be a crime in this country.
Mehmet Varlik also believes the operation should not be criticized. Quite the opposite. To support the offensive, he decorated his snack stall in Istanbul's conservative Eyüp neighborhood with Turkish flags, and he is donating some of his takings to the soldiers.
Everybody can support the party they want. I wouldn't judge. But when national security is at stake, you have to back your country.
Varlik has 1,500 euros to send to the front line, and he wants to continue with his project. For the moment, there is no end in sight to Turkey's military offensive in northern Syria.
Our last stop takes us to Peru. Last month, the government approved legislation allowing for new roads to be built into the country's rainforest, a practice that is often accompanied by investors keen to acquire land, even if this means using extreme methods.
We've come to Ucayali, an area inside Peru's Amazon rainforest that's been badly hit by deforestation. Robert Guimaraes is on his way to visit an indigenous community. They can only be reached by boat. Guimaraes heads up the Federation of Native Communities in this part of Peru. He grew up in a village here, but he doesn't come back often. It's become too dangerous.
I
received a lot of death threats. They left a message in my house saying if I opposed their activities again, they'd better not see me in the village. I believe I'm in great danger. Guimaraes opposes the large-scale deforestation in his region, and that has earned him some powerful enemies. He never comes here alone now. This time he's with staff from the organization Proetica, the Peruvian arm of Transparency International. They visit Santa Clara de Ochunya. Residents here have come under pressure from companies looking to set up cocoa and palm oil plantations. The village chief calls everyone to a meeting to discuss the latest developments. They're taking legal action to try to stop new palm oil plantations opening near their village. Now the village wants to have 20,000 hectares turned into legally protected ancestral territory. The initiators have received threats, and the danger is very real. Just a few months ago, 6 farmers were found shot to death. So far, no one has been held accountable for their murders. But how do these large corporations get their hands on thousands of hectares of land seemingly overnight? Proetica has examined the land deals and documented their findings. Now staff from the NGO have come to inform local residents. We wanted to highlight one thing, namely the connection between deforestation, the illegal trade in land, and corruption amongst local officials. Proetica gathered available documentation and carried out numerous interviews. Many of the deals reached in this region are linked to Czech entrepreneur Denis Melka. He's now being investigated by state prosecutors. Melka Group companies have stripped 13,000 hectares of rainforest to make way for plantations. They were helped by corrupt local politicians who invalidated existing land rights, ignoring those with legal claims and handing the land over to companies.